Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I am going to make a Wonder Woman circlet based off of the most recent Wonder Woman movie that came out. So I'm going to show you how I'm drawing the template, cutting the leather, everything. And I am making it out of leather, but I'm making it to look like metal. And this is just part one of a 3-part series where I'm doing the circlet, the bracers, and the greaves. So yeah, I'm gonna get started then. So I'm just gonna angle this down. I have a piece of freezer paper here, which has a papery side and a waxy side. And I'm just gonna come in here and pin that down. I also went through my binder of templates that I have because I'm like, I've been making circlets and headdresses and stuff for years. So surely I have something that's like roughly the right shape just as a starting point. And so I was going to take this one because I have a reference image pulled up over here on my laptop. That way, I can kind of stay true to canon a little better. Because normally, for those of y'all who've been following me for a while, I can get kind of creative with this stuff and not really stick to any particular design or pattern. So okay, so I think we have that. So that's how that's looking, and that's the half of it. So I'm actually going to fold this over just as much directly on the halfway mark as we can. And so now we can darken these lines down with our marker. Okay. So there we have that. And now we're going to flip it over. And if you press it down, you can kind of see where the other lines go. I'm sorry for all the loud outdoor noises. It's a beautiful day, so of course everyone in the neighborhood needs to mow the grass and make sure their engines still work. So I'm just going through and re-darkening over these pencil lines that I just transferred. Okay, so now I'm going to find a suitable piece of vegetable tanned leather, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. So here we are with a piece of vegetable tanned leather. This came from a double shoulder, and so it's a nice resilient piece of leather, relatively unblemished, though honestly you could use something, you want it to be smooth but don't mind like the natural wrinkles and texture of the leather. And this is about 4 millimeters thick. Not sure what the ounceage is off the top of my head, and you'll see it's also quite stiff. It's not super floppy. Like this stuff here is a super floppy leather. This stuff is stiff, floppy. So yeah, but that's also oil tanned, so there's differences. And so now we're going to make sure we have a good position for our design. And this wax paper came from like the end of the spool, the end of the roll, so it's all kinds of, it doesn't want to lay right for anything. Sorry y'all, my camera crashed there. So what I did was we got it positioned and I just started tracing my design with the pen. And you can see it makes this very nice line work there. So I'm just going to keep kind of tracing it as quick as I can so that the camera doesn't crash on me again. And check and see and make sure that you did actually go over all of your lines. But I don't want to check and move it around too much just for fear of shifting the design. And you could totally tape this down or, you know, do anything really beyond just holding it with your hands. But this is what I'm doing, so yay. Okay, and I think that's it. There we are. So now you can see that's the line work for the circlet. Put our pen away. And now some options for cutting your leather is you could use just heavy duty leather shears, or also a very sharp heavy duty box knife. I enjoy using a combination of the two, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come through here. Be very, very mindful of your hands, because this stuff cuts through skin this thick. Like that's what leather is it's skin. So if it cuts through this with such ease, it's not going to think twice about just slicing right through your hands, like right through your skin. So I didn't get quite as close to my line as I would have liked, so I'm going to come through here and trim it back with my scissors as well. That's not a very good angle, so I'm going to come in from the other side. And again, these scissors will not bulk at all at just slicing right through your skin, so be very careful. Rule 13 around here is you do not bleed on the merchandise. Whenever it comes to doing cuts that are up close to what we're doing, I really like to start at the point and then pull away from it. And then we can come in and just very gently work our way just like that. That way it's not overcut. Be sure to save your scrap. I mean, just by a hair's thickness. Because you want to have a nice clean corner there. Just coming in and cutting out these inlays. And also what's really neat is these very similar techniques can be used if you wanted to make this out of foam. just gently, gently. There we are. Now, if I were making this out of foam, I would cut out, different layers and things, because foam doesn't bevel nicely the way, like, you can't tool foam the way that you do leather. There are some differences between the materials. So I haven't finished the ends yet, but I'm going to transfer over to a different work surface, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. Okay, so we're over here at my impressively messy workstation. And while you could just cut this out or use a template or something to make sure it's nice and even, I am using an end punch. And I don't think I've mentioned it already, but all the tools and materials used here in this video will be listed down in the video description below. So I have a poundo board, a granite slab, and a cutting board. And I'm just going to line this up. And I'm actually going to offset this to the side, that way I don't hit my tripod again. I actually need to just lift my tripod up. There we go. Yeah, like, ignore my messy work area though. So there we go. And that gives us, super nice clean lines. There we go. And now I'm going to do that on the other end. So now I can set that aside and set this aside. And now the next step is to bevel the edges. And I'm going to be using this edge beveler. It looks like this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to come through. And if you were doing this on foam, you would be using a Dremel to do this part. There we go. And it just gives a really nice clean edge. Makes it look a little bit more finished, and it comes in super handy when you're burnishing and sealing your edges, which is important in the longevity of your piece. Okay. It's kind of hard to get in there on these little pieces, but so I'm just going to get what I can and then leave the rest of it to fate. And I'm going to do the same thing to the back. I think it's always good form to treat the back like it's just as important as the front. You want to seal it the same, you want it to look just as nice. And it's, you don't want it to be, all super fancy and nice and great on the front, and then look at the undercarriage and it be like, well, this looks like garbage, because that will, kind of set the tone for the rest of the piece, too. I feel like my work is only as good as its worst part, because to me, that's what stands out, but we're all our own worst critics, so. Okay, and that is something that I feel like with leatherworking is way faster than with foam smithing, because it's like, just done. But also, I don't have nearly as much experience working with foam as I do with leather, so. And I left my squirt bottle over on the other side of the room. So I'm just going to pull that back a bit. And we're going to come in and we're going to wet this down. Nice and wet. And you can kind of see it's starting to soak up the leather, or the leather's starting to soak up the water. It's really gulping it in. This stuff is pretty good about holding a lot of water. And you don't want it to be like sopping wet, but you do want it to be well penetrated. So I'm just taking the excess water and kind of moving it around. You can go ahead and get some on the back too. I usually don't case the back Just because I use it to soak up the extra water from the front. And now I'm going to go through with a swivel knife. You could use a craft knife, but I really like the control and the durability and just everything of a swivel knife. Bring that down. And I also find I have way more control if I'm pulling towards myself as opposed to pushing away. And it also puts where the blade is going directly in my line of sight. And you want to be careful to not overshoot where your cuts are going. Making sure to check back with my reference image, make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. And so you can see those cuts are really starting to make some differences here. Now, if you're quite new to this and you don't trust your line cutting skills, feel free to, like, a metal ruler could go a long way in helping you to feel confident about nice, straight, long strokes. I drew my lines all the way to the end, but I'm going to stop at this cross point here. And you always want to make sure you have a nice sharp blade. I use a piece of leather with jeweler's rouge on it that I don't have on hand. It's buried somewhere on this table. But I had just sharpened my blade, so... Now also here you can see my cut line was way straighter than my draw line. And that'll be fine. We'll work around that. Okay, so it looks like the only other lines that I have to cut are a little bit on this side, a little bit on this side, and now this star, which I want to be really just perfect. Which is going to be hard for me because I really want this star to be nice. So I think I'm actually going to come through and draw out a little bit more carefully where the star is going to go. So, like, there's going to be one point right there. Okay, so just do whatever it takes for you to feel confident in what you're doing. And I'm just coming through and doing gentle cuts. It's more important to me to establish and cut deeply at the points of the star than it is to make sure that the cuts come all the way in, because the tooling will accent those joins, like where they all come together. But I want the tips of this to be very nice and clear and not at all muddy. Okay, I feel like that's not the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my whole life. It's a little off center, but I'm not gonna let that ruin my day. So there we go. And I can write it off as part of the charm of being handmade, maybe. So we're going to set our swivel knife off to the side. And now we have... This is a large beveler from Tandy Leather. Again, links for all the tools and materials down below. And looking at our reference image, this part here is the most recessed, like the most in the back, as is this part down here. So I'm actually going to bring the camera down quite a bit so that hopefully you guys can see what it is that I'm doing. Okay. And so I'm going to take our beveler And I'm going to line it up right with the edge of that line that we cut. And just kind of tap and walk it and see how it bevels into the leather. I'm having to kind of be a little gentle and weird about it because my camera is right there. Like, it's very easy for me to accidentally hit it. Yep, see, just like that. And so that's nice and brought into the background. So it's important to me as I carve this to make sure that the different parts that are supposed to be in the background, because I want to give it the illusion of being layered, since we aren't actually working with layers. And so by doing this little bevel here on this side, it's going to make it look like it's behind this piece. See how that kind of works? Even though it's all still just one piece. Then we do have a tool called a lifter that we could be using, but I'm going to focus more right now on just making sure that we've got a nice deep cut. We can go back over that cut and actually bevel again is an option. And that way we can go even deeper. I'm gonna add a side note here. You do not want to do that on a place that's structural. Because the tooling does intrinsically weaken the leather, not just from an armor perspective, but from a, you know, if this were on a belt, I would not do this near where there's a hole punched for the belt tongue to go through, because you might be more likely for it to like tear or something. And again, I'd worry about that more on a much thinner leather, but still, it's always something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Oops, just beating up my tripod. So yeah, so there we've got some nice little bevels going on. I'm going to see if I can't manage a different camera angle. Okay, and now it looks like this piece here is the next most in the background, so this should be a lot easier. No weird edges to worry about falling off. Okay, so there's one line. Now already you can see the difference between beveled and unbeveled. And it's just, it can be slow going at first, but honest to goodness, the more you do this, the faster and more consistent you'll get about it. Like, for me, I try to shoot for where you can't see where the tool stopped or started. Sometimes it gets kind of wonky and you'll have like stuff going on like that. If that happens to you, just go back over it. Be gentle and patient, both with yourself and with the piece. And you'll be able to, for the most part, even it out nicely. So it's always good to shoot for the highest quality you can manage. But if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. You've got this. And more often than not, you guys, you wouldn't have noticed that, you know, that I had messed up there if, you know, if I weren't pointing it out, being like, hey, see how that's slightly different than the rest of it? You know, especially after it has the dye job and everything on. Okay, now I am going to go ahead and go through and just kind of gently bevel right here on this side, and then deeply bevel right here. And I'm gonna cut again. And come through. Bad to the bone. Please don't get me for copyright infringement because the neighbors are playing their music. So I've cut it again, and I'm coming through and hammering. This is classic rock right here, you guys. But I'm not gonna lie, I am gonna be kind of upset if YouTube nabs me for copyright infringement. It's like, I can't help it, YouTube. Okay, so there's that. And this is just the effects that we're going to be able to get from the beveling. I can still go through and make that slightly darker than the foreground pieces and make it look like it has even more depth to it. So that's beveled and that's unbeveled. There's a pretty fair difference, I think. You'll notice when I bevel, I actually use my pinky to bear most of the weight of my hand. And that way I can just float my tool. And I think, at least for me, it makes it a lot easier to walk my tool along. Beating up the camera tripod again. Okay, so again, I'm going to bevel it quite lightly right here. And quite deeply here. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to redo the cuts. And so, I mean, because you can even see it's a very minor difference between the two, but there is a little bit more, I feel like a little bit more of a roundness and depth to this one where I did the double cutting. And it could just be that, I mean, I beveled it twice. But, I don't know. I think we got this, you guys. You can see you don't have to hold the swivel knife with the finger either. It's just, I've been using a craft tool more than anything here lately. So I'm a little bit out of the habit of using my swivel knife properly. Though really I feel like properly is how is most effective for you, not, you know, not necessarily someone else. So I'm just going through and re-beveling this. Lots of little tap, tap, tap hammering. Yeah, leatherworking's a difficult hobby if you live in an apartment complex or have persnickety roommates or, you know, anything like that. This can definitely get old very quickly, even with the poundo board underneath. Okay, so there's that. And also, I mean, check out with just, you know, 1 or 2 tools, 3 tools, 12 tools, you know, you can really get a nice effect on leather. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, is you don't have to pay a lot or get super fancy. It's more about what you put into it than having, you know, $1 million worth of tools. Okay, so next is, it looks like this piece is the next, you know, on that same kind of background layer level. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna do this last little corner here. Now also, we do have another beveling tool that does little corners. And I feel like this gives us nice, sharp corners. I'm not very good at using it, but I'll get better the more I do. And so that's just something to keep in mind as an option. I like to kind of line it up with the cuts and then just tap. So that gives a little bit sharper of a of an edging effect. That's definitely something I would do coming through to do like finishing touches on all of our work. And definitely something where a lighter touch goes much farther than just whacking the crap out of it right from the get-go. Because you can always go through and tool it in just a touch darker, but it's really difficult to pull out an over-tooled piece. Okay, and this one especially I'm very interested in for just placing, especially on this star, which I think will be the last one that we do. But I'm going to be placing it in between all the little rays of the star, the points of it. Okay, so now next is actually along here. Being very careful to not deviate too much. Like if I'm going to have it deviate, I want it to go inward as opposed to crossing over into the piece that's trying to look on top of it. So there's that, looking pretty sharp. Oops, sorry. So there's that, looking just as sharp as I can get it. And now I'm going to come through and touch up these last 2 lines. Man, though, I will tell you guys, a headpiece is way easier than a breastplate. Like, you know, because I kind of feel daunted sometimes when I think about all the tooling a piece is going to take. You know, but then with this circlet, I was, you know, feeling kind of daunted. And then I'm like, oh wow, we're almost done. And so far I'm pretty pleased with the result. So now, last detail place, coming through. Trying to do our best to not fudge it all up. Because wouldn't this be the time and place to just set the tool and just mess up? And you can totally turn the foot just onto one point. That way, because I don't want too much of it, you know, extending out beyond. Oops. Do 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 do. Boom. Okay, so this is not as crisp as I want it. So I'm actually going to position this and just whack. Position it and whack. Position it and whack. Position it and whack. Position it and whack. Place and whack, and hit the tripod and place and whack and place and whack. Okay, so now to blend out, there's a little bit of like deeper lineage than what I would have liked. I'm just going to kind of come through and not using the hammer at all, but just using this beveler foot, just using the texture of it to kind of gently stamp and blend these lines out. You can also burnish a little deeper if you need to in any areas. But it's mostly, I just want to make sure that these lines and these textures are, you know, only where that they all look intentional, not that any of them were a messy afterthought that just got left out of place. So there is that, you guys. I'm pretty pleased. Like, I think it's pretty sweet. So I'm going to assemble a couple of other things, and then I'll meet y'all right back here. Okay, so here I have a couple of Pearlex pigments in Aztec Gold and Antique Bronze. I have a bottle of acrylic Resin. This one has been much used for this purpose. As you can see, it's got a lot of kind of it looks pretty dried up and gross. Let me see if we can't get some of it out of there though. So I think what happened with this one is I actually mixed in, yeah, you can see there's a whole bunch of like Pearlex already down in there. I don't think that was a good life decision. So now fortunately I have this clean bottle of acrylic Resin. And I like using this stuff because it keeps our Pearlex from rubbing off. And it's just kind of easy to work with while penetrating and protecting the leather. So I'm just going to pour some into this tray. Now also I am going to put on just a little face mask because this stuff says to on the package. Like it says, blah, 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 avoid breathing dust. Use only with adequate ventilation. So that's fair. I'll take their recommendation. So on the little face mask goes, because I like to craft in comfort and style. And I'm just using 2 little old brushes because this Resiline's going to get all gunked up in it. But I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to take the caps off of these. Gotta rub my nose. And I'm going to use the handle of this fork that I use for spray painting stuff because I'm so organized. And just put some into the cap. And set that there. And then I'm going to use this other fork to put some, I don't need nearly that much, into the cap on this one. Okay. So I'm going to start with the light colors. And so I'm just dipping into the acrylic Resin and then into the Pearl-Ex. And then I'm going to focus on just spreading that around. And you can do some nice like layering effects and different things too. Blending in different colors. So this isn't quite as yellow of a gold as I think I would, like as what it looks like it was in the movies. That could be part my lighting. No, it's not a very yellow gold. So I'm going to go rummage through my bin real quick and see if I can't incorporate a little bit more of a brighter yellow, because I think I do have something. So I'll be right back. Okay, I was wrong. I did not have something, but the good news is this is the same gold that I used on the belt for the client. So at least they'll all match each other. If that makes sense. So I'm just gonna, kind of on this first base layer, I'm just covering everything in this gold. I want it into all the nooks and crannies. I want it nice, even, as close to perfect as we can get it coverage. Because also, while this is stylized after the movie, definitely, the rest of the costume was much more of a classic Wonder Woman style of like red, gold, and bright blue. Like they were very bright, vivid colors. So this isn't, I'm not worrying so much about being canon here, but that's definitely something that you can take in mind onto your projects and take these same techniques and use whatever colors that you like. I aspire to have an airbrusher one day. That would be really cool. Just, you know, if I get to ask Santa nicely. But, because that way I could just avoid entirely brush strokes and all the different things that... Also, from what I've watched on YouTube of other artisans, airbrushing goes by way faster too. Which is neat. Because time is a very precious commodity that I cannot make any more of. There we go. Just kind of getting down, again, into those nooks and crannies. An option is I could have gone through underneath with a black antique gel or oil-based paint, and that would have helped kind of make all of my low tones lower, but I think I'm pretty pleased with this so far. So now I'm going to come through and I'm doing the edging. Just coming through, making sure it's all good. I like to be very generous on the edges because they're going to take the brunt of, excuse me, they're going to take the brunt of the wear and tear over time. And so in the same manner, I'm going to go through and just finish touching up all the edges, and then I'm going to do the back as well. So I'll meet you all right back here whenever I do that. Okay, so here we are. I have a layer of the Aztec gold all over the front and the back of this piece. And now I'm going to be going through with our antique bronze. And I'm going to start out quite gently with this over on the far end. That way, if it's not that great, we can blend it out and make it more what we're going for, if that makes sense. And it seems to be working out pretty well. Trying really hard to stay in the lines. And trying to rub it kind of into this grain that is formed. So see how that kind of gives us, I mean, it's a little bit of a two-tone, but I think that'll come across nicely in making the piece look like it has some nice depth and layers and things. Warrior women have layers like onions and ogres. Just getting just a touch of it in there. And I'm also going to come through and just bring out the contrast here on the edges. And this is, again, quite minimal, but the magic happens in the details. And so then we've got that darkened down just a touch. And now I'm going to darken down this top part as well. So there we are. I wonder what that would look like if we just took it and... Nah, not gonna worry about that. So now we have this going, and I'm actually gonna take these and just put them right back into their bins. Close that up. And I have just some very ultra fancy glossy black acrylic paint that I'm just going to take and, make a mess with. It was way more than what I needed. Oops. And I'm going to take this really messed up brush. Like, it's got stiff bristles and it's been messed up and grossified, so I'm not at all worried about ruining it further. And I'm searching for a scrap piece of paper, if I could find one. And of course I can't. So I'm just going to take a touch over here, stipple it, get most of the paint off on the palette, and then I'm going to come through and kind of just dirty up these edges, like in the beveling. And you really want, almost no paint on the brush. That way, just the more you kind of rub and antique, the more it will deposit very, very minimally. And I really like using that textured beveler for this because it really picks up on all that little hash marking. And I like using a relatively flat bristled brush for this. That way, I don't know, I just feel like it lends itself better to getting right into that crack of the beveling. And in those same spots where we wanted it to stay kind of dark, I'm just going over it with the black a little bit more. So I'm just dry brushing across. So again, you can really see the difference in details on this side versus this side. So going through and antiquing this is making a huge difference. And honest to goodness, you guys, this is something I learned from my good friend Lauren with Little Ruin Cosplay. She's a master at painting foam. And it's been so great to get to sit down and hang out with her and learn so much about painting. And even though it was, for foam smithing, is totally applicable for leather too. Like, that's really upping my game. And since the acrylic paint is going on so thinly, it's still fully flexible and everything. So I'm really pleased with this. I recommend this as a medium. Now, Annie's, I think, is the brand of leather paint. Like, they're like Kova colors, but I feel like they have a more broad spectrum of colors, it seems. But it's another paint that's used quite a bit in the foam smithing community. But you could be using that, but just regular old, Walmart paint. And so I'm just going to get a little bit more on the brush and then pat off most of it. Oops. Just kind of brushing it on in there. Being really careful to still relatively stay in the lines, though. I'll close my laptop with my reference image because the battery's about to die and I don't have it plugged in and I don't want to stop painting to plug it in. Hashtag first world problems. So yeah, oh my gosh though, you guys. Really pleased with how this is coming out. And also with the acrylic resin, if it's too much with the black, you can still come through and buff it off with your finger before it dries completely. But we're looking for a sense of symmetry here. Like that's too much. And so we can just wipe it off with our finger. Yay. I'm going to come in here, antique this part down. really buff off any extra that we don't feel like we need. So there's that. Really buffing down into the edges. And that's the thing with this too, is you can always add more. But just start with just a little. Okay, so now we're just coming in on that star detail, you guys. Makes me a little nervous. I mean, really, the star detail isn't technically more important than anything else that's happening with the circlet here, but it's just, it's so front and center. If I'm gonna mess up, I want to mess up over here, not right in the middle, you know? Excuse me. Excuse me again. Okay, so now I just kind of very gently coming through. Focusing on those details, letting it take its time. There's absolutely no sense in rushing it. You know, you've put in all the hard work up to this point. There's no sense in, you know, wasting it now just because you're in the finished streak. So I mean, you can see that up close, the difference between antiqued, non-antiqued. Then the dimension that it gives to have, you know, the actual three-dimensional tooling going on in there. And if it comes on a little heavy in one point, just go ahead and buff it out. Try your best to, at least. And I'm trying really hard to just get it into the deep details, but to leave the star itself quite vibrant. Okay, so there we are, you guys. And I think I think we're done with this paint job, y'all. Now I can totally come in just with my finger and do some antiquing on the edges, maybe? Except for that, it doesn't really seem to be sticking. I don't know how much good that's going to do us. But just for symmetry's sake, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just to see if that works. And again, it's not really... well, it's not doing anything. Just be careful if you're using your hands like this that you don't just leave grubby little fingerprints everywhere. But you can totally come through. I kind of like just using the paintbrush. And darken down the edges. Again, like this would likely be made out of like bronze or something. And so that's gonna antique down pretty reasonably. Now also this paint's probably going to burnish right off, so I'm not going to put a whole bunch of effort into it just yet. There we are. And that's how that goes. Now we can take this, and the way I'm going to do the elastic on the headband is I'm actually just going to cut 2 slits. Like you could punch a hole and just rivet it, but I'm going to cut 2 slits and then feed it up and through the way that you would like an adjustable strap on a backpack. But I'm going to do that off camera because we have got to run and go help out some friends. So like Randy just flashed the 10-minute mark at me. So, or, you know, you could take something like this and have it be continuous all the way around, or, you know, just however makes you very happy. So I will see you guys in the next video. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. And I'll show you in the outro how we got it all put together. How about that? Okay, so here you can see I wanted to go ahead and show you guys how I'm going to be lacing this up. So this is probably one of my favorite ways of making headdresses for selling in the booth because it's so adjustable. I have some wide, like 1-inch wide woven elastic in black. And I'm going to do it just a little bit longer than the width of the headdress because you want to give it, I mean, a little bit of adjustability. I don't think I have any scissors over here. Crap. Box knife to the rescue. Okay, so I'm just kind of cutting it like that. And now I'm actually going to feed in from the front on this one. So I'm just splitting it kind of open. Stop licking your armpit, dog. Sorry, it's like he knows I'm recording and he comes over and starts making weird noises. Just for you guys. So this would be a lot easier if I had some pliers or something on me, but I did not think ahead. So now I'm just cramming it through with my fingers. But we're just gonna come in here. Can probably use the handle of a paintbrush or something. And push it through. There we go. And you can see that holds it, I mean, really snugly. And then I'm going to feed it through the back in through to the front. So let me go ahead and open this up just a little bit. Oh, wrong paintbrush. And I'm just going to kind of feed this through. Just pushing it through from the back. Again, much easier if I had pliers, but this is, well, good thing it was an old paintbrush, I guess. This should work. A metal tool instead of a wooden one. Von Smash. So I'm just pulling this through, some nice thunder in the background. And the reason why I do it like this is because now as it wraps around, it will hold this side flush to the head. There won't be like any leather bits or anything just poking out weird on the sides. Another option is you could have punched a hole and then, you know, punched a hole in this and put a leather washer on the back and laid it like that. But we're just going to do that same thing over here on the other side, feeding in from the front first. And while it is kind of difficult initially to get this to go through, you don't really ever have to restring it, but it does make it really easy to replace the elastic with, say, ribbon or, you know, leather cord or, you know, whatever else you might want. There we are. And that's all taken care of. And now you can also totally adjust this. To adjust it, I would hook in here and loosen it just a bit. Kind of hold on to this part, but go ahead and just pull it on through and start just feeding it in this way, and then pull on this part and it just tightens it down. And so that way it's fully adjustable to all the different head sizes. You could make this small enough to fit a child, or large enough to fit my giant head. So, and over the years, the elastic is going to wear out before the leather does, which I'm going to go through and seal this on both sides with some Aussie wax, which I guess I can show y'all how to do that now. So here's the Aussie wax. That's what it looks like. And I'm trying to find, I did have a little horsehair brush that I used to buff it in. But I'm just going to come through. And you can see that really adds like a nice shine and warmth to it. And I'm just going to buff it, getting it nice and on the edges. Gonna get another fingerful and rub it into the back, because this helps seal the leather, it helps condition it, it helps repel moisture, and it makes it smell super nice. I love that smell of Aussie wax. And here's my brush. It's the same stuff that I use for like shoe polish and stuff. Aussie wax is really good for your hands. Help all those wire wrapping calluses. Impromptu manicure time. So now we can come through and just kind of buff. Ideally, I would have done this before attaching the strap, but honestly, I'd forgotten. But this is an excellent opportunity to show you it is never too late to go back and condition your leather properly. Just gonna keep rubbing it in, getting it all into those edges, especially into those edges. Which, speaking of which, now that it's nice and on there, let me see if I can't find my edge slicker. And of course I can't, because why would I? So I'll just use this plastic one, since I can't find my wooden one. And we'll just come through and slick down the edges as best we can. And that gives us such a nice smooth finish. Like, I don't know if you can see the difference between slicked and unslicked, but texturally it's night and day. This is very smooth and sleek. This is very rough. And this one's actually kind of nice. You can actually put a drill bit through it. And then it's almost like you're dremeling your edges, but you're coming through and just slicking them down. Then you can let that kind of just soak into the leather. And then you can also come through with a clean but stained up cloth and buff it off some more. And there we go. And that's it with the finishing coat on it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down in the comment area below. If you would like to share pictures of what you've made off of any of my tutorials, this one or any of the others, you can tag me on Instagram or share it to my Facebook wall. Again, links are down in the video description. If you enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as get access to the templates, the very same template that I used for this one, please check me out on Patreon. Again, links down below, as well as the thing popping up on the screen. Maybe if I remember to edit it into the future, or in the future, into the future, where you can go and learn more about what we do on Patreon, because we do like fairy house giveaways, monthly craft crates, all sorts of different stuff, and we're always adding new things and kind of like shuffling things around as it evolves. So it's fun to kind of get in early. But yeah, if you have any questions, comments, ideas, I think I already said that. But yeah, just thanks guys. I had a whole lot of fun making this, and I cannot wait to make the rest of the outfit. I'm gonna be making matching bracers and matching greaves for the client. So I already sent her a picture and she is super pleased. So that's cool. Like that's what makes me happy, because I'm not done until the client is happy. So but yeah, so I'll see you guys around. Happy crafting, y'all. Bye.